to understand literature, we have to understand history. There are a few big events that happened during the Middle Ages that had very strong impacts on the literature of the time. So let's look at those things. The first one is going to be the Crusades. From the Crusades come heroes and legends, but no real military successes. It was pretty colossally a military failure. However, it was a social success in that interacting with the people of the Middle East offered us more advances in math, in astronomy, in architecture, crafts. It just helped to enrich who we were and what we were doing. Back at home, the populations of the cities and towns kept growing and growing and growing, which made the feudal system more and more obsolete. So the soldiers were off in the Crusades fighting, leaving just people at home working. Think about the workers left behind during World War II. The soldiers were off across the ocean battling, and the roles that they normally would have filled at home had to be filled by other people. So the merchant class is going to emerge. And once you start adding economics, you end up having upper, middle, and lower classes. We also have art becoming not just a religious experience, not just belonging in churches, but something that people felt ownership of and would take for themselves and make for themselves now that they had disposable income. So take a moment and look at this very low-resolution image of a 15th century depiction, so the 1400s, scene of a city in probably Flanders, which is, I believe, in Belgium. Look at all the different activity that is going on. We have retail stalls, we have craftsmen, we have government all happening, interactions, we've got some lovely outfits on the guides up front, and all this is part of this new, more social, more economic stability that was happening during the Middle Ages. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of turmoil still happening. One of the biggest examples of this is the discord between King Henry II and Thomas à Becket. Now, if you recall, Thomas à Becket was King Henry's friend and confidant, and King Henry's only real challenge to his throne and his power is the church. So the king controls like all the things that happen in the country. The church controls where you go when you die. So even though the king controls the man, the church controls the soul, and so there's some serious conflict happening there. For instance, the church can excommunicate the king if the church doesn't like what the king is doing, and can thereby control him. King Henry was having a similar situation, or having that same problem with Becket. He made Becket his archbishop, thinking, I'll make my best friend my greatest rival, and he will do whatever I want because he's my best friend. But Becket was his own man, and a Saxon, and so he didn't always side with the king, which the king absolutely hated, especially in terms of money. So King Henry needs some money. He needs some money to fight a war. He is trying to find more money in his fairly poor kingdom. We're not talking about a whole lot of riches happening here. And the richest people are the church, and the church does not pay money to the king. So the king is trying to get the church to pay him money. They won't. They refuse. There's lots of other drama happening there. And King Henry, out of frustration, makes this off-the-cuff random comment saying, well, no one rid me of this turbulent priest. But he's the king. You can't make offhand comments like that if you're the king. So 4 of his knights take him at his word and go into the cathedral and murder the archbishop. This created some significant public outrage, made Sir Thomas became a saint, St. Thomas à Becket, and created a backlash for Henry. Eventually, thousands and thousands of people came to Canterbury to visit Becket's grave, and there's in fact a mark on the church of where in the church he died. I want you to take a moment, look at this image. At the very top of the image, I'm going to point to with my little cursor, there is a little fenced-in area, and you can kind of see a pile of stuff. That's actually his shrine. I'm not sure if it is his actual grave, but it is his sarcophagus. It does have a sculpture of him on top of it. And then I want you to notice the steps. Notice how uneven they are. They have been worn smooth by people traveling those steps to visit Becket. pilgrimages were an important part of religious life in the Middle Ages. They usually happened in the spring and summer. Think about it. They had no entertainment over the winter. They were so predominantly illiterate, so they didn't even have books. So forget TV. They had no books. They had nothing to do but kind of stare at each other inside these towers, maybe like crochet or something. But they needed, especially the well-off, wanted to get out and move. So they would travel. They traveled to Spain, they traveled to Canterbury Cathedral, and Jerusalem and Rome. We're going to be reading Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, which is a series of stories told by 30 different pilgrims as they travel to Canterbury from London. So take a minute to check out these travel routes. Seriously, they were traveling all over Europe. We are starting to get a much more intercontinental society where travel and experience is part of what life is like. As we had our crusaders coming back from crusade and bringing parts of culture, that then encouraged other people to go experience those things as well. Our trip from London to Canterbury is not nearly as long. It is basically a day's ride from London to Canterbury, just enough time for our 30 pilgrims to tell a handful of stories. Other important deals you need to know about is the Magna Carta. Magna Carta was signed in 1215. Please make sure you note it's the Magna Carta, not the Magna Carta or anything silly like that. This is where our barons kind of start to curb the power of the king. They are going for some democracy, some giving the people the rights to their own leadership, which has been crucial as the basis for English constitutional law. Other big stuff going on, the 100 Years' War, which is more than 100 years long. It is a long war with France. It is such a long war that we run out of knights. We have no more knights. They're gone. They're dead. They're instead placed by something called yeomen. Take a look at that word, Y-E-O-M-E-N. These are going to be your small landowners, or small lords, very, very minor nobility, if they're even still nobles. With the emergence of the yeoman class, this is truly where modern democratic England was born. Even though we earlier had a middle class of merchants, they still are basically powerless. Truly the last thing that was in some ways a benefit to the society of England was the Black Death. So the Black Death only lasted a year. This is also called the bubonic plague. It was spread throughout England by fleas on rats. Roughly 1/3 of the population was killed. This is also, so how does this help the society? Our people who were killed, they left vacancies, meaning that our caste system could no longer stay a caste system and became a class system, as people who were promoted and given more power, rights, and responsibilities. Not titles necessarily, but power, rights, things of that nature, based on their skill and still who they knew. And that's it. We're going to need to know about a couple of those things, specifically in terms of the Canterbury Tales. Chaucer himself was promoted because of the Black Death that left some roles open for him. The Canterbury Tales are based on pilgrimages to the Canterbury Cathedral. And there's plenty more information on YouTube, on my playlist, and just the web. The Middle Ages are full of stories, history, and crucial moments in our society.